Hello. We're playing shoe shops today, and I'm trying to decide which shoes to buy. Just look at all these shoes. Help me choose which kind of shoes to buy today. Shoes with buckles. Shoes with bows. Shoes with room to wiggle your toes. Slippers. Boots. Shoes with laces. Trainers. Wellies with funny faces. Which kind of shoes would you choose if you were buying shoes today? Oh, I like these shoes. I like socks too. Nikki's found a picture of some socks on the cover of this book. And the story's called A Fox Got My Socks.
Storytime!
There's a little boy in this book too. Look, there he is. He hasn't got any socks on. I wonder what he gets up to in this story. Yesterday was washing day. You see him pretending to wash his clothes? My clothes flip-flapped and blew away. There he was flapping his arms, pretending to be the clothes. A cat got my hat. There he is, touching his head. A fox got my
Socks.
socks. There he's touching his toes. A goat got my
Coat.
coat. An owl got my
Cow.
Oh no, said the pig. These pants are too
Big.
And the bear gave a snort. These jumpers too
Short.
short. Pulling up his jumper, isn't he? Two baby llamas were in my
Pajamas.
pyjamas. And where was my scarf? Wrapped round a
Giraffe.
giraffe. But the sun was so hot. I said, keep what you've got. I'm perfectly happy.
They stay in my nappy.
That was a good book, wasn't it? Now, will you go and put that back on the bookshelf for me, Nikki? Thank you. Ooh. Ooh. These shoes feel all tingly. I think they might be magic shoes. I'm going to try them out. I wish I could go to a place where there are lots and lots of shoes. Look. It worked. Brilliant. Hundreds of shoes. I think I must be in a place where they make shoes. Yes, that's it. It's a shoe factory. Oh, look at these. These shoes are made out of shiny leather. Takes a lot of people to make a pair of shoes like these. First, the leather is cut into different shapes. This machine stitches a pattern onto the leather using colourful threads. Then there's a lot more stitching to join the leather pieces together. Holes are punched in the strap and the buckle is attached. Now, when you're making shoes, you need one of these. Looks a bit like a foot, doesn't it? See if you can spot how it's used. The parts of the shoe are stuck together using a special kind of glue. Then the sole is stuck on. And there you are, a finished pair of shoes. Now, can you imagine what it was like before we had shoes to wear? Just think, your feet would get all dirty. And that's exactly what happens in our next story.
The King with Dirty Feet. Once upon a time, there was a king, and he lived in a hot, dusty village in India. He had everything he wanted and was very happy. But there was one thing that he hated, and that was bath time. This king hadn't had a bath for a whole year. He'd begun to smell terrible. Nobody liked to be in the same room as him. And his poor servant Gaboo was very polite, but he just had to put up with the smell. Until one day, the smell became too much for even the king himself.
Oh, I think it's time I had a bath,
said the king. And he set off slowly down to the river bank. The king stepped into the cool, clear river water, and when he called for the royal soap, everybody cheered. The king washed himself from top to bottom. He scrubbed his hair, he brushed his teeth, and when he was absolutely clean, he called for the royal towel and stepped out of the water. When he'd finished drying himself, he noticed that his feet were covered in dust.
Oh, bother, he said. I didn't wash them well enough. Bring me the royal scrubbing brush.
The king scrubbed his feet until they shone. But as soon as he stepped on dry land, they were dirty again. The king was furious.
Gaboo, he called. Gaboo, the king is clean. The king has had a bath, but the ground is dirty. There is dust everywhere. Gaboo, you have 3 days to rid the land of dust, otherwise, zoot.
What is zoot, Your Majesty? Asked Gaboo.
Zoot, said the king, is the sound of your head being chopped off.
The king marched back to his palace, and Gaboo put his head in his hands, and he began to think. When something is dirty, you brush it. All the villagers took their brooms, and they all began to sweep. Swish, swish, swish. The dust rose from the ground and filled the air in a thick, dark cloud.
Gaboo! Gaboo! Where are you?
Here, Your Majesty.
Gaboo! I asked you to rid the land of dust, not fill the air with dust. Gaboo, you have 2 more days or zoot!
Oh dear. Gaboo put his head in his hands and he began to think. When something is dirty, you wash it. All the villagers took their buckets, filled them up with water, and they all began to pour. Sloosh, sloosh, sloosh. The water rose up to their chins. Swim, everybody! Cried Gaboo. The king climbed to the top of the tallest mountain. His feet lapped with water.
Gaboo! I asked you to rid the land of dust, not turn our village into a swimming pool. Gaboo, you have one more day or zoot!
Gaboo put his head in his hands and he thought, oh dear, when something is dirty, you cover it up. All the villagers took their needles and their threads and a piece of leather, and they all began to sew. Stitch, 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 stitch. They made a huge carpet of leather, and it completely covered the ground. It was clean and comfortable.
Excellent, said the king. Very good. Well done, Gaboo.
But then, out of the crowd, stepped an old man. Your Majesty, he said, now you've covered everything up, nothing will be able to grow. There'll be no fruit, no vegetables, no flowers, no grass, no plants. There'll be nothing for the animals to eat, and the people will be hungry. Your Majesty, you don't have to cover the ground with leather to keep your feet clean. And then the old man bent down to the king's feet, and he took out of his pocket a pair of scissors, and he began to snip round the king's feet. And then he pulled out a pair of laces, and he tied them onto the king's feet. Try them, Your Majesty, he said. The king had never seen anything like it.
I can go here. I can go here.
He took another step.
I can go anywhere, cried the king, and my feet will always be clean.
What was the king wearing on his feet? He was wearing shoes, and they were the very first pair of shoes ever to be made. And people have been wearing them ever since.
Ooh, my magic shoes are tingling again. Here we go. I wish I was back in that lovely shoe shop.